Watch the virtual roundtable organized by the South Asia Rainwater Network-SARNET to mark World Water Day 2026, joined by women water leaders and men who are promoters of leadership of women across South Asia and beyond. Safe water and sanitation are human rights and drivers of gender equality. When water flows close to home, girls stay in school, women gain time and work, and families are healthier. Yet women remain underrepresented in water decisions. The theme of World Water Day 2026, where water flows, equality grows, center women as users, leaders, and professionals. In this discussion, you will meet an eminent group of panelists who will share their journey in advancing rainwater harvesting to improve access to water for women and marginalized groups. The discussion is moderated by the President of International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance, Mr. Han Hainan, instrumental in forming SARNET, a mentor and an inspiration for many water conservation enthusiasts from Asia, Africa, and beyond.
The issue of World Water Day this year, focusing on gender, focusing on the role of women and men in the provision of water at household level, municipal level, national level, is still something that we have to work on very hard. The roles are still rather, let's say, disjointed in the sense that most of the men are looking after the management of the national water supply services, whereas the women suffer to collect water at the household level to ensure that they have water at the household level. Some of my listeners will say, well, that is not the case in my case, because I live in a city and there is a public water supply. Even there, the public water supplies are often, these last few decades, suffering from shortages, seasonal shortages, or periodic periods where water can be provided to one part of the city and not to another. So water is an issue for everyone. Water is the issue that you rise with in the morning. You want to wash your face at least. And can you have a cup of tea? Do you have to go out to ensure that you have sufficient water for your children to take to school and whatever? So water is a general concern for everyone. Now, we have progressed quite a bit in terms of the provision of water to urban settings. But while we are doing so, we are also depriving to some extent rural areas from water resources because the city has to be provided with water, and that is where the voters are. So there are plenty of issues there, and normally the conclusion is that the women are the ones facing the music. That means to say women and girls have to collect water early in the morning before going to school, having to set aside other jobs that they want to do. And that is basically a continuing problem. Now, all the participants today in our session are ladies and one gentleman who have been working on improving the role of women directly, indirectly, in order to ensure that, water is easier available at their home, that they can control water better, and also provide programming such that water supply becomes a universally accessible source for everyone. I have a number of good friends here. Badra Kamaladasa, who is a colleague of mine of a few years ago when we were both working on a master plan for Sri Lanka water and sanitation situation 2030-2050. And she was looking after the water resources component. Extremely important. And even in a country that is generally wet, we still have shortages, mismanagement, or problems relating to climate change causing the dry season to be longer. Then shifting to Alina. Alina and her colleagues are working on urban water supply provision, urban rainwater supply. And that is a very interesting activity which we had the opportunity to visit last September when there was a conference in Lahore on rainwater harvesting in Pakistan. A very impressive and difficult area to work in Islamabad and so on, very congested. And what opportunities do you have to provide water? But rainwater was certainly part of the solution. And I would like to hear a bit later from Alina how that has affected the role of women. Now, I'll move to another younger person, Sony. Sony is the president of the Young Rainwater Champions and has been very active in rainwater harvesting and management, as also for the International Water Association. And we are, of course, very keen to see younger people coming in, younger men and women, but in particular women. And that, of course, is gradually happening because there are more universities now seeing women entering the studies that are required to be a professional in the water sector. We'll hear more about that later. Jos has a long-standing work with as the district rainwater harvesting mission in Kerala. In different ways, he has been an inspiration for a lot of people, and not only an inspiration, but also a dynamic pusher and making sure that things were happening the right way, which is not always easy when you have to talk to politicians and other seniors. And then, of course, the person who has been longest working on rainwater in Sri Lanka, Tanuja, as the convener of SARNET and the CEO of Lanka Rainwater Harvesting, you have been able to produce more than, not directly, but indirectly also produce more than 50,000 systems in Sri Lanka, which is really a very great achievement. Now, what difference has it made to women? I know a little bit because I lived in Sri Lanka for a while, and I lived in places where people had to go down, where women had to go down the hill in order to collect water. But we would like to discuss that now with yourselves. And I would first like to give Badra an opportunity to start it off and give us a little bit her background. She is, of course, a well-respected person within the water sector, representing the government, representing the Institute of Engineers, etc., etc. And she has been a person who has been, and still is, very active in different important aspects of water resource management in Sri Lanka. Badra, in the issue of the first discussion point that we would like to raise, how important is rainwater harvesting or rainwater in the context of Sri Lanka, economically, water resource-wise? Could you give us a bit of a view? And what the role of women, how does it affect women?
Yeah, thank you, Han, for that kind words and introduction. Actually, billions of liters of rainwater fall on our rooftops every year. Not only in Sri Lanka, in most of the countries, but yet much of it goes to waste. So that is the most important point. We have to make sure that these should not go into waste. The rainwater harvesting is not just an alternative. So it is a practical and economical and also immediately available solution for water security. So unlike a large scale centralized system, which I was involved in most of my career, the rainwater harvesting does not require heavy investments. That is what I see the beauty of the rainwater harvesting system. And there is no requirement of heavy investment in storing, transmissions, treatments, or distribution. The technology is so simple, and operation and maintenance costs are minimal. So those issues we can promote more and more rainwater harvesting, especially to fill the gap what we are talking today on gender and water gap. So in countries like Sri Lanka, particularly in remote and rugged areas, as you mentioned, centralized system cannot be always reach everybody. I mean, every household, especially. So the real question is not how many connections we provide, but whether every family has reliable access to water. So people are always want to quote this is the number of connections we have given. So it is not the point what we want to see, what we want to achieve, whether every family has a reliable access to water. So actually the rainwater harvesting allows us to build resilience from the ground up to the household community and also the community level, and it goes beyond drinking water, and it supports home gardening, small scale agriculture, and even income generation activities. So, from my experience as an from the irrigation sector, I want to highlight one of the most successful ancient rainwater harvesting systems still in operation today, the cascade tank system. I'm not going into much detail, but you can refer and see how it was successfully implemented and continues for millenniums. So it supports community water needs spread across the Sri Lanka's dry zone, and it sustained entire village by capturing rainwater and meeting domestic agriculture and even the environmental needs. That is very important. So the more we study, the more we realize how advanced and sustainable this system truly was. So it is not just a water supply option, the rainwater harvesting. It is a resilient and inclusive water strategy. I want to underline the word inclusive water strategy for the future. That's my answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhadra. Going from a more rural context, how people are using rainwater, to a situation in an urban setting. Alina, when I visited your project, I was surprised to see how densely built up the area was. And how could you make water supply, rainwater supply, an option there that would be acceptable and feasible for people? How did you do it?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to mention that at present we are working with United Nations Habitat as an implementing partner, and I am the program support officer for Schehersaz. Regarding the rainwater harvesting plants opportunity, it was not an easy deal to crack. It was definitely a challenging situation because the infrastructure here in Rawalpindi and especially in the Union Councils is densely built up with not so much spaces for the houses to have the required catchment areas and the certain space required for the rainwater harvesting plants to install there. Having said this, I would like to credit my senior management and of course our field teams who worked day and night and came up with better engineering assessments, crafted out ways so that they can really come up with houses where they can be successful implantation of the rainwater harvesting units. it was definitely a difficult task to begin with, but eventually, with the effort and planning of our team, we were able to have more than 600 houses where we have installed the rainwater harvesting units. And I'm so glad to inform you that with this initiative, even the government of Pakistan, with Capital Development Authority Islamabad, has announced in Islamabad to mandatorily install rainwater harvesting systems in their houses within the next 6 months. So you can, visualize the kind of importance and the critical nature of rainwater harvesting has taken over this course of events.
Excellent. And how was it for the women? Did it make a big difference for them?
Of course. Coming from an organization which is women-led and whose agenda is to have 50% or more women on board in terms of their teams, in terms of their field teams that we call community champions. We were able to have 50% of women on board when it came to the field teams where we had mobilizers, women mobilizers, and then we had taken into consideration the fact that we must hand over that inclusive decision making into the hands of women. We are now in the process of drafting our community scale plans where there would be 50% of women participation, and those plans would be handed over to them for the better water user groups and solid waste management, maintenance of the rainwater harvesting units, and taking the local governance of their areas into their hands. So these initiatives are also underway. I would like to show some pictures of the recent community scale plan meetings where women were particularly focused to have onboarded. They were, briefed well, they were trained well, and they are actually participating in the decision making of the water governance of their areas. Here are some pictures I would like to share. We had a meeting a few days back. Would like to request screen sharing.
Yeah.
Dunashi?
Sure.
So here is one of the pictures where we are conducting the community scale plans meeting. Women are being onboarded. They are filling the input performa of how they need and want things to happen with respect to water user groups, solid waste management, and water governance in their areas. And the broader umbrella was definitely the disaster risk management. So we are actually handing over the planning and implementation into the hands of women, particularly women, because we really want it to be 50% of the entire workforce we are having on board. So this was one of the other pictures where our team lead, Mr. Ejaz, is briefing the groups about how they are going to, draft and implement the community scale plans. So that's how we are working.
Thank you. We have not yet been discussing the suffering that women sometimes have in carrying water, in having to make sure there is water at home. How many gagris in Nepali? How many buckets of water can you carry? Scarcity comes in, and then we say, well, we have no rain, so what can we do? Scarcity is an issue. Now, Jos, when you're discussing the situation in Kerala, you have a system by which you mandate, I suppose, the excess rainwater to flow into wells that are charging the aquifer. Can you explain that a bit further?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Sure.
All right. Well, I'm from India, on the southern tip of India called Kerala. We have, it's a rural-urban continuum, not purely rural, not purely urban. It's a mix of the rural-urban continuum. We started the rainwater harvesting program, or I'm involved with this rainwater harvesting program for the past 25 years. We have the potential of open dug wells within our homesteads. That's a peculiar situation we have in Kerala. So people prefer the well water within the homesteads. So now the problem we faced for the past couple of decades, I would say, we had the scarcity of water level going down during summer because of the climate change what happened. So in the summer, the water table going down in the wells, and in the coastal parts along the seashores, we face the water quality problems like saline ingress to our the water wells. So these are the two problems we face. To address the problem, we found the solution of roof rainwater harvesting for well recharging. So this is a solution. This solution is suggested by Central Groundwater Board of India. It's not a new solution we found out. It's a scientific technique suggested by the Government of India body called Central Groundwater Board of India. So we started promoting this subject with the support of the government system. In my place, it's a place called Thrissur, where we have Thrissur District Administration, the government system. We started to promoting this subject, and we got the consent from the government of Kerala. We named a program called Madapulima, where we started installing the roof rainwater harvesting for well recharging. And so we have implemented more than 40,000 of such units, and now we don't have the number. So the impact is the solution that directing the roof rainwater to the wells. Now the water table improving in the summer, and the water quality improving in the wells. So no more saline ingress issue we have in the wells. Also iron content in the well water, also that iron part is reduced. So the quality improved and the quantity improved. So the people found that it is an acceptable solution, and the people started to do that. So many people doing that. And see, in Kerala, we have no water problem here. The water table is not going down. That became a problem for me. We are not getting good work because the people started doing by their own. So solution. Now, coming to the women's part, 2 points are important. One is the acceptability of subject. Okay, within a homestead, in a family, when the mother of a family decides that this is a solution, the quality of water is suitable for either for drinking or for the domestic uses. So that part is very important. So the women in the family decides that this is important and this is a solution, it can be adopted. So that is a key factor as the role of women in this. So so if the women say that I have come across in the post-settlement colonies, some women said, no, this is not good. It may have some problems. While collecting the roof rainwater, it may have some bird drops or such issues they may come up. But by and large, you have come across that there are no big issues. So the women decides that this is a good quality water, while it improves the groundwater table and the water levels. Also, it improves the water quality. So that part is a very important. So the women's decision to accept the subject, to accept the roof rainwater, that's underlying factor. Okay, that's one part. Another fact is that the accessibility. Since we have the homesteads and the open dug well within the homesteads, very close by, normally both men and women, there is no difference in between, because unlike in the other parts of India, you can see that the women carrying the water pots from collecting the water from distant areas. So that problem we don't have in Kerala, because since we have the water wells nearby. So the accessibility is not a big issue, but the acceptability is more important. If look at the urban areas in India, there are a lot of scope for roof rainwater harvesting. But again, when the government supplied water comes through the pipe supply system, the people prefer more for that water. So less important for the roof rainwater harvesting. That challenge is still there. So the acceptability of roof rainwater along with the accessibility, both are very important. So acceptability of the roof rainwater is a key factor in the scenario of the women development, or the women in the whole subject. Okay, thank you very much.
Just a small question. Do you subsidize, or are people also doing it on their own?
Yes, the government subsidy is we tried to get the subsidy from the government system. So the government has decided to give subsidy 90% of the total cost as subsidy. So it's administered through through local government. So the local governments decides the beneficiaries who all want this roof rainwater harvest for well recharging. So the local government has got the capacity, they have got the provisions for giving subsidy. So in that way now across Kerala, the subsidy is given and it is promoted, and people getting that subsidy. And even beyond the subsidy, the rich people, they find that this solution is good. So they may not go for subsidy. So they do it by their own. And apart from that, in the government rules, in the building rules, there are stipulation. They should have the roof rainwater harvesting structures. So many people doing in that way. So the government's focus is I look back for the past 25 years, our mission accomplished. Now this is summer season. We do not have the drought news in the newspapers. So when I look back in the year 2000 to 2010, we had a lot of drought news in the newspapers. Now, no longer we have the drought news. The journalists find difficult to get this drought news. So that's a change. And that is one part. Again, another part is that the people like me who work in the water sector, we have no much work because our work, the knowledge is disseminated. The people doing it by their own, because it not necessarily we need to have the roof rainwater housing structure for well recharging. Suppose we go for a homestead watershed approach, like within the homestead, whatever the rainwater we get to allow to percolate down, the well will have enough water. It will improve the groundwater resources. So that way also it's done well. So accept site-specific solutions we promote. So that way this problem is solved. Okay, right.
I think, yeah, that's a very important aspect of water management locally. Culturally, you probably didn't collect rainwater directly, but
Yes.
rather wanted to use the water from the well. But of course, direct use would also be an option. Yeah, this is, of course, also an aspect that is important. The population of Kerala is generally well educated.
Right.
And so it means that information that is available through government channels and programs will probably also percolate to households. And there also, I think many of your girls and women are also well educated, so they have access to information that they can directly discuss at the kitchen table with their husbands and say, look, we should be doing something about this. So I think that's a very positive situation that you have.
Definitely. And it started in the year 2004, a newspaper called Malayalam Manorama. It triggered its own flagship program. Newspaper started pushing the subject, rainwater house, in the year 2004. And all other newspapers also started copying this subject. So we don't have that, the news has gone down, so the percolate through the schools and all. Okay, right, thank you.
I think, Soni, you are facing a situation in which you're trying to engage with young people as young rainwater champions. And there also the issue of education, of training, of information, of encouraging people to become a partner in rainwater harvesting comes in. What did you do? How does it affect the young women in your group?
Thank you, Answer, for the question. I think rainwater harvesting has brought so many meaningful opportunities for women's leadership and in participation. At community and household level, women are often the primary water managers, and they have taken the roles on planning and managing and maintaining the systems. from my own personal experience of working with women in rain communities project in Nepal, especially in this Maskot, a rural village in Kaski district, which faced severe water scarcity and daily water hardship. Like after the implementation of rainwater harvesting system, there were like significant changes in the village. It particularly affected women because they were primarily responsible for collecting waters. They had to spend hours fetching water. Once the system were constructed, like they had more time, more time for engaging themselves in community life. Like the local mothers group were very active. They were participating in various like local capacity building activities, and they were like active and confident to share their experience and stories with other people. So this shows like there has been like transformative impact of rainwater harvesting on the daily lives of women particularly. Also, like I would like to share another case, like another example from our recent training on rainwater harvesting that was organized by Young Rainwater Champions, YRC, in collaboration with Concha Nepal and International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance. So yes, women, I was particularly surprised by like women's participation. Like almost half of the attendees were female and most actively engaged in all the sessions. So when I initially sent the invitations to these participating organizations, I had not like mentioned being specific like to send female participants, but they like they did send the list which included like female participants. So I think that was that clearly like demonstrated like women and youths, especially young women, are contributing and making progress in rainwater harvesting or in water sector. So that was my experience.
Yeah, I think what you see here is, of course, a situation where young people are ultimately going to face the music if there is no water around. And so they become interested, maybe through their studies, in water resource issues. And then, of course, the examples in Nepal are there of rainwater harvesting applications. Now, of course, the question then is, and I'm now turning to Tanuja, the question then is, how does the government then support these processes? Of course, in Sri Lanka, around 70% is what we are likely to manage in terms of piped water supply. The other 30% we somehow have to do in a different way. How does the government do that? Policies, subsidies, plans? And what about the 50,000 test sets that you have already constructed? Tanuja, you're muted. No, you're not there even. Yes, you are there. Did you get my question, Tanuja?
Sorry, Han. I went out and came back again, so I missed the question.
No. I'm
Repeat it.
interested. How have you changed the government in Sri Lanka in terms of rainwater harvesting, encouraging policies to take place, or organizing so many capacity building and conferences and all kind of opportunities to raise the issues of rainwater, and how does that? What difference has it made, especially in the last 10 years in resettlement areas, etc.? Just a few words on that would be good.
Yes, thank you, Han. Yeah, Sri Lanka has been very lucky to have have the first policy on rainwater harvesting. So since 2005, and as a result, I think because of that there was a lot of work done through different projects, water supply projects, which installed rainwater harvesting systems across the country. in different areas, in the dry zone areas, in chronic kidney disease prevalent areas, etc., in the rural areas mostly. And also because of this policy, I think I feel that it also had a hand in putting rainwater harvesting, highlighting rainwater harvesting in other policies as well. For instance, water resource policy and climate change policies. So it's all rainwater harvesting is included in those as well, which is a great thing. And as a result, it is promoted in those different ministries, different stakeholders as well. So in that way, we have been very lucky. Although, I mean, one of the recommendation from the policy was to have in the urban development UDA or urban development authority regulations. It is there since 2009, but not totally implemented in many areas. But I think it's been looked at and reviewed, and I think it will be again they'll be implementing it. So I think in that way we have been very lucky having a rainwater harvesting policy in place to promote the idea to the
I
community.
think you had some other support as well, because of course you had the support of the minister, later Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, in also making regular statements and appearances in relation to promoting the rainwater harvesting concept.
Definitely, yes, yes. I think it was placed very well because he was as the Minister of Water Supply as well as Minister of Urban Development at that stage. So he was instrumental in promoting the policy formulation as well as then bringing it to the much attention of the government later years as a Prime Minister as well.
Yeah, the Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena. Very good. Now, these type of issues are, of course, very important. We have to have a concept. We do have a risk of not getting water always because of shortages that are caused by just human habitation, the way we live, what we do, but also by climate change. Climate change is lengthening in the South Asia region, lengthening dry seasons. Or, as Alina was saying, we had a very unsuspected rainfall a few weeks ago. Now, of course, you're always thankful for that, but at the same time, it is something that is showing that, you know, there is a different urgency. The urgency is there to look after rainwater. As Badra was saying, we should not allow the water to flow away. The rainwater should not be flowing out from our catchment areas unused. It has to be stored, or it has to be kept for a utility later on, like the cascade system. And that is, I think, something that concerns women very much, because today they may be using this water. Tomorrow they may be looking for another source of water, in the sense that in the rural areas in particular, not all sources are perennial. So you may have to go far for a hand pump to collect water, or you may have to go for a Wewa to see that, you know, the water is green and you don't really want to use that anymore, a tank in India. So the issues are there. So if, on the other hand, you have rainwater harvesting near your house, then it means you have peace of mind most of the time. Because the other interesting thing is that the engineers calculate, and the engineers say, a tank of 5,000 liters, for instance, can only last 6 weeks for a family of 4 or 5. However, when you come after 2 months, you still find that the woman still has water in the tank. And why is that? Because they calculate differently. They are very considerate on how the water is used and for which purpose. And that I think that local management is a critical issue. Many women will also lock the tank at night. Certainly in Uganda, where I was a few weeks ago, that was what was happening. They do share with the neighbors, but at the same time, they lock the tank at night because they want to keep the management. And I think that's a wise decision. You help each other, but you're not wasting the water. You cannot afford to waste the rainwater because that is your future. Now, the question that arises then, Badra, you're an engineer. Jos, are you a manager or an engineer?
Well, I'm a social scientist.
Social scientist, very good. They can also calculate. A bit less good than the engineers may be, but they can calculate. Now, the point is, why do we forget all the time that rainwater is there? Now, here, of course, in this small panel, we're discussing with people who are applying rainwater harvesting, who are doing it, and who see the difference that it makes to the household, to the women. But why is it not happening? Are the policies not there? I'm very happy to hear, Alina, that your example in Islamabad is now showing the government that they have a good example of how they can resolve part of the problem. Maybe not the full problem, but at least the resilience of the households has increased when they have a tank near their house or on the first floor, as I have seen. So, Badra, any comment? I mean, how many engineers? I'm an engineer, and then the rest, not so many engineers. So, you know, the engineers and the planners are usually the ones, they think differently. Now, you as a woman, you must have been considering in your time in the department, etc., where irrigation, of course, you provide water for irrigation, but at times you cannot stop an irrigation channel so easily because the women also need the water. How does it work?
Yeah, exactly, Han, because even though it is called irrigation, we are serving the irrigation sector. It is not only the irrigation sector. It serves the whole, the community requirement, as I mentioned earlier also, the domestic requirement as well as the environmental requirement. So when there is a dry season, the off season in agriculture, even we are compelled to release water through the canals for the wells to recharge, for the people to have, there are no in-house bathing facilities and all that in rural areas. So they use the canals and those flowing water as their bathing places and washing. So in that way, it is now. If you take a village, small village reservoir, we call it a tank. It's a water tank.
Yeah.
That supply water to the community. It's an open tank, always making the, anyway, there are wastages and all that, not like the tank what we are having at home. So now, despite the proven benefits, rainwater harvesting remains, what I feel is it is underutilized, even in the water-stressed region. Tamika highlighted that there is a rainwater harvesting policy. In addition to that, there are regulations. Built-in regulations are here in Sri Lanka, enforcing the requirement when there is a multiple condominium buildings are built up. There should be a rainwater harvesting component to be included in the main estimate, main architectural plan. So we should show the calculation of the rainwater and how it will be used. Yes, these things are happening. Recently, I involved in many environmental impact assessment reports, and when I go through the design reports, I can see they have included, of course, the rainwater harvesting system and what they are going to do with gardening, washing the vehicles and things like that, because they don't want to combine the main service supply water and the rainwater, but to make use of that. So the actually the main barrier is not the technical; they are institutional and perceptual. Uh, uh, because the water, the use of water, rainwater, some people have still they have the reservation. So there are still strong preferences for large scale infrastructure projects uh, because which are naturally attract to the some of the political leaders because a lot of fundings are coming and that sort of things are there. So as a result, rainwater harvesting is often seen as a secondary or alternative. So another key issue is that lack of integration into the education and technical standards and professional practices. Again, that even though regulations are there in our university curricula, there is only little input in the on rainwater harvesting. So the students who are going to be practitioners later on, they are not much familiar about the rainwater harvesting applications. That is one major impediment. So the gap is not always the knowledge anyway. We already understand the benefits. The real gap is the mainstreaming, enforcement, and also the change in the mindset. So if we address these things, rainwater harvesting can become a standard component in our planning and not an afterthought matter.
Increasingly in Europe, you find that many countries are enforcing rainwater harvesting. Belgium has been lately very active and requiring a 5 cubic meter tank for each house. And even if each existing house is a bit difficult, but each new house and each house that is adding another room or something at the same time has to put in a 5 cubic meter tank. Now you may sometimes think when I'm saying that it still is a bit a rainy day when I look outside, that it is not an issue. It is an issue. It is an issue everywhere. The urgency of water scarcity is even there in countries that are usually called wet, like the UK. The UK has serious problems with respect to water scarcity in some localities, and tomorrow they will have a flood in the same area. So water resource management, the management of rain, and the utility of rain is something that we have to work on as politicians. If we don't do that, we're in trouble. Now, Alina, I wanted to ask you, in your case, you're talking with the women in the household. Your management, and I saw that you mentioned 50%, more than 50% is female. I suppose that, you sometimes position yourself as a woman in such a household and say, look, what do I need to do? How do I need to change the system such that rainwater harvesting becomes an option here? Because once a household has a tank, it is not only collecting rainwater, but if there is a central supply, it can also fill up the rainwater tank when there is a longer period of drought. What's your perception? What's the perception in your project?
Well, when it comes to the water conservation strategies, we significantly lagged at this understanding when it comes to household and particularly women, because the social and institutional structure in, mostly in South Asian societies is built up like that it tends to exclude women out of such kind of decision-making practices and kind of awareness that is necessary for them to have this understanding of how they are going to manage their water resources. Although it is, entirely their responsibility to deal with the household stuff, but at the same time, they are not given the enough awareness, training, and technical skills to deal with such kind of difficulties when they have to come across such situations. So, in the context of share SaaS, we had this opportunity that we recognized this gap and came up with a strategy to fill this bridge up it with the essential trainings, especially to the women participants. In the selected union councils of Rawalpindi and Nushaira, so that we can train them on how they can manage their water resources at home in their localities, how they can better manage the solid waste management with in the form of specialized trainings that were conducted throughout the provinces, and they were dedicated master trainers that were there to demonstrate them on how they can better conserve their water at their households, how they can better use the rainwater harvesting unit plants at their spaces, how do they maintain it, and what other alternatives can be there to employ the rainwater harvesting unit systems. So it was taken up as a proper initiative to educate women and of course people at household so that they can better be adept at how they can utilize the rainwater harvesting units to their best. And for that, I would like to again show that how these trainings went up. Yes, I have got some pictures and proof.
Sure,
I would
sure,
like
sure.
to
Yeah,
show.
I think you're still free to too.
Okay. So I was looking to add some pictures. This is one of our trainings in.
It says nothing to show here.
I don't know what's happening. Let me do that again. Just a minute. So we had this training sessions for water user groups and solid waste management in Rawalpindi and Nushaira, where there were specialized trainings given to the women and of course men in Rawalpindi. And of course, the sessions were conducted in Nushaira as well, so that they can, better adapt themselves at the awareness regarding the water conservation strategies and how they can make better use of rainwater harvesting unit plants at their houses. Also, there is a proposition under consideration that will definitely Share SaaS is going to implement is to technically train women to work on such kind of plumbing skills and maintenance of rainwater
Right.
harvesting units. So we are particularly working on that as well.
And does it also yield some leaders from these groups of women? Are there people who are speaking up, women who are speaking up to their community?
Definitely. With the just I had mentioned earlier about the community scale plans, we are going to have community organizations led by women who are going to have that local authority and water governance into their hands, and they would disseminate that important information to the community women they interact with, because there is a social constraint of women would not be able to interact with men openly that way. So we had to be considerate of the fact that women should be there to onboard most of the women who are managing their household, and particularly those households where our rainwater harvesting units have been installed. So they are taking the leadership positions, and we are also going to train them via Rescue 1122 to train them with essential life-saving skills and disaster risk reduction strategies.
Excellent. So it's one thing that is, of course, extremely important is to have people, women who can speak on behalf of their group, of their concerns, and argue with other decision makers about improving the situation.
Yeah.
That is a process. It will take a little bit of time depending on opportunity and culture and urgency, but it happens. Sony, it does happen, doesn't it?
Yes, answer, yes.
So in your case, young rainwater harvesting young rainwater harvesting champions.
Champion.
You have been showing up in various meetings and on the screen, of course. You have been very active. You're currently in the UK, but you have been working a long time in the hills of of Nepal, Western Nepal in particular, those areas that you were working in were not necessarily very dry. The only thing is they're extremely hilly, quasi-mountainous, and so the water rushes down. And the situation was such that many people did not have the facility to build a rainwater harvesting system because it is still a bit costly. The costly bit is in the tank, isn't it?
Yes, the storage, construction of the storage tank. It's a bit
Yes.
costly.
And that is, of course, something for which we have not yet found a real solution. One can, of course, make it cheaper. One can subsidize, as in the case of Kerala. But to some extent, we also have to see that there is financing possible. Banks should maybe rural banks should be mobilized to. Why should you only take out a loan for a motorbike? Maybe you should be able to take out a loan for a water tank. How would it change the position of women in that sense? Sony, any idea?
Sorry.
You were thinking somewhere else.
That's an important question, Sony. Where Hans take that why we should not go for loans for the rainwater housing tank. Perhaps the women may go for gold loans. They may go to purchase gold. They may go for loan. But why not for the water tank to store the rainwater? So that's an important question Hans is raising. That's so I don't know the cultural pattern over there.
Yes, I think it's a good plan to give women's loans to construct the rainwater harvesting system in their household. However, in Nepal, it has not been implemented yet. But of course, that would be a good option, for women to apply for loans and get a rainwater harvesting system in their households. So far, I haven't seen any such cases in case of Nepal, but it would definitely be a good idea.
The discussions have taken place with at least one bank in Pokhara.
Yeah, we had tried,
but somehow it has not yet come to fruition. But these are, of course, also issues. How can we make rainwater harvesting, rainwater tank become so common that it is as good as a motorbike for your household? These type of things are important because you see now the other thing is now Mr. Trump has decided to cut US aid to size, means to say to zero. Generally in the world, because of the problems of the last years, we are facing difficulties in generating external funds. So, especially in countries like Nepal, that are very dependent on donor funding, you have to start changing the business model. You have to start making it possible for internal structures to generate funds to do things that you feel are needed. It's a serious discussion I'm also having with countries in Africa because Africa is also all the money has gone, is not coming anymore, but still the health requirements, the infrastructure requirements, and all that water supply in particular are still very much needed. So how are you going to do that? And this is something that will be a challenge for the next few years. And I think it's very good if we raise these issues also with women, because notably, women are better financial managers than men. Men take different choices, unfortunately, to some extent. So I think the women are more capable of making the choice that really makes a difference for their household. So that's something that is an important thing to consider for the future. I would like to give Tanuja the last call for the for this panel because we're already running a bit out of time and Jos just had a small intervention. So Tanuja, in view of this discussion on the role of women and yourself all being promoting the role of women in different ways, because a lot of the work that we do is because of the women. How do you see the future in rainwater harvesting? What do we need to do?
Sorry, Hans, again, soon as you speak to me, it goes off.
No, it's okay. I was just wondering, concerning the issues that we have been discussing, the role of planners and engineers overlooking rainwater harvesting, the financial requirements in order to get a tank constructed or bought. How do we view rainwater harvesting in our national or domestic development?
Yeah, actually, I think rainwater harvesting is still thought of as a poor man's option. So I feel this is why it is not been mainstream by engineers and planners. So it is the last, even in the water board or any other thing, it's the last option that they go for. I think we should upscale it to one of the best options, especially for in these hard to reach places, and also in the urban areas. I mean, as Elena's example, and also even in the areas where pipe water is available, it should be another option as a supplementary for water. See, because many cities are now having issues providing pipe water to all households 24 hours. So we should upscale the technology and also the perception that it's the poor man's choice. Then I think it will be taken up by the professionals more as well. Pardon the engineers for saying this, because they are still into, big pipes and, as Bhadra also mentioned, pumps and things. But still but the world is moving on, the resources are getting, scarce. So we should try to upscale the rainwater harvesting system to serve everybody, not only just the poorest of the poor or the most needed people. This is my
Thank you,
opinion.
Tanuja. I think there is an issue. When I listen to Alina, when I listen to you, Tanuja, Jos, of course, is making his own argument. When you consider the private sector as a user of rain, in Sri Lanka, there are plenty of examples where the private sector is making money out of rain simply by collecting it and reusing it in its processes. I'm sure in India it's the same story. If I look at the hospitality industry in Sri Lanka, you go through their annual reports and you find that all of them are working with water conservation, with all kinds of blue-green solutions, and trying to use rainwater for landscaping and whatever the case may be. Now, then that, of course, is not focusing on the household, but it goes to show that if you save rainwater, you save money. And that is, of course, a serious concern. Now, of course, in a case like Sri Lanka and probably India, the same thing, the water cost by cubic meter is not so high, but still for poor people, it is high. So if you would be able to save that cost by collecting more rainwater for your other activities at home, that would make a lot of difference. Lastly, to conclude, I want to give you one example. Since about a year in my village, we're working on saving water. The government wants to go from 129 liters per head per day, say about 500 liters per household, to 100 liters per head per day. So we have to reduce by about 25%. Just by giving people, of course, this is a urban, well, let's say, well-to-do village and so on and so on, people are using a fair bit of water. But so what we have done is we did a trial. We provided a metered solution so you can see on your mobile how much water you're using real time, every day, every month, and I'm the one kind of keeping track of it. And so in the last year, with these households, we have reduced over 10% of the water that they used before. So you can say, okay, so you go from 129 to about 118. Okay, but in 1 or 2 years' time, you will even go lower. And the one reason why they can go lower is because we are encouraging everybody to use rainwater as the additional support, additional resource. Also use rainwater. Use it for your garden, for your cleaning your car, as it was mentioned. And I think it's that type of thing. We all the time have been kept in the situation in which we have only one source, piped water supply. No, you do not have one source. You have piped water supply. If you have it, you have a well nearby or a hand pump, but you also have rainwater. And traditionally, certainly in places like Sri Lanka and Kerala, that rainwater was collected. So why can we not professionalize that a little bit more and make better use of that rainwater such that everyone in the household, and especially the women, can benefit from it? As the background says, it gives us more time. And with more time, it means we can engage better with the community. We will be better respected as women. And that is important. And then, of course, with the growing young women entering the workforce, it also means that there will be more inspiration, more ideas coming in. And so let's work on that. I would like to thank you all for this very interesting panel discussion relating experiences from around South Asia. And I hope that a lot of people will find it interesting to listen to it, see it, and pick up some inspiration, some good practice out of the ideas that have been circulating this afternoon. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Han. Thank you for facilitating, moderating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Han.
Okay, thank you, Batra. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Han,
Alina.
Alina, Mrs. Kamala Das, Dr. Joe, Soni, and Tanuja for giving time for this virtual roundtable. So hopefully we will be editing and sharing it with all of you so that you can also share with your networks to send the word out. And Mrs. Kamala Das, it was great to have you. We are having you for the first time in one of our SARNET events. So hope you will continue to be continue to join our events and discussions in future as well.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Batra, thank you.